Welcome and good evening. Today I'm going to walk you through Cornell notes, and then I'm going to take you through your first lecture called the High Middle Ages. So let's get started. Don't be distracted by me in the corner. Pay attention to what goes on in the middle of the screen. You will need a sheet of paper, and that's about it. So, sorry, let me go to the beginning here. Here's today's schedule for what we're going to do this evening. We're going to talk about Cornell notes, and then I'm going to go over the High Middle Ages. Let's begin. So, every class lecture and every reading you will have a job, and I'm going to explain that right now. So, your job, taking notes. All lecture notes need to be taken by hand on a sheet of paper, no exceptions. Number 2, let's go over this in more detail. In class, when we're doing lecture, same process, and you need to pay attention and be ready to answer questions at all times. Participation points. So let's talk about Cornell notes. Cornell notes basically allow you to keep your topic that guides and drives your entire purpose, your main idea on the left side, all your notes on the right side, and then after each lecture or reading, you're going to respond to the question or lesson objective at the bottom, and we'll talk more about that. But let's go ahead and set that up right now. So if this is the title of your lecture, High Middle Ages, Society, Church, and Politics, on your sheet of paper, you would do this. High Middle Ages, Society, Church, and Politics. So there's your title. Always have the date. You should have your name somewhere on there. And then what you're going to do, we're going to have a lesson objective for every lesson. So let's go look at our lesson objective. Here it is. And what I would like you to do is when I put this up on the screen, you're going to pause and you're going to do this. So you're going to make a table. You're going to divide your sheet of paper in half. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to put in a little table. Lesson objective. Notes. Okay? And on this side, you're going to copy down the lesson objective. So I'm going to pause the video and copy down the lesson objective myself. You need to pause the video and copy down the lesson objective as well. Here's your lesson objective. Begin. Welcome back. You should have this written down and it should look exactly as mine does. Alright, let's break down this question a little bit and take down a few notes. So, keywords, development. That's what you're going to be describing. And development means it equals, and write this down, something has changed or it evolves. It means it's changing over time as well, but you're looking at something that's new that has existed before or something that never existed that now exists. In this case, you're looking at medieval, social, which is medieval is a period of time we'll talk about. Social equals people, write this down. Religious, whenever we talk about religious, we're talking about the church and congregants, or the people of the church, church members. So everything to do with the church. And when we talk about political, we're talking about the government. Okay? So systems, church is a system, government is a system, society itself is a system. So basically we're looking at society, the church, and the politics of the Middle Ages, and describing how they change during that time period. I am going to go back to your lecture and we are going to begin. Pencils down. And I mean it. Pencils down means pencils down. Alright, for the next couple minutes I want you to just listen. And then we'll take notes afterwards. So I'm going to give you a little geographical background for Europe that we'll be talking about all year. One thing to keep in mind. A map that I'll show you from 1100, so 915 years ago, looks very different from a map today. We're talking about Europe. So know this here now. They look nothing like each other. The boundaries, the borders, the nations, they're very different. We're going to talk about why, throughout this class, why that's happened. But before we do that, we're going to look at a video that shows this actually in action. So this is 1,000 years of Europe's borders changing over time. You'll notice things like Kievan Rus you might remember from our Russia unit in geography. Russia wasn't called Russia, it was called Kievan Rus. And you don't really notice too many nations besides France and England, Poland, Hungary. This is called Muslim Spain. Oh, Sweden and Norway. So some nations existed, but Europe changes, and over time it becomes very different by 2015. So let's look at just how it changes in 200 years from 1151 to 1350. So you can see the borders are constantly shifting in Europe, and you can think of reasons why. War, diplomatic marriages. A king marries a queen from another country and acquires the wealth of her father, the king of that country. Immigration causes a change of borders. Disease, all sorts of things changes borders. But you can see Europe is constantly changing. And that's what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to stop right here. Ooh, I got it. 1350. So pause. Okay, so what we're keeping in mind is remember that these borders of Europe are changing over time, and a map from many years ago is going to look very different from the map you see today. So keep that in mind. So this map, yes, this map, you see medieval Europe. The time, this is 1300. And you see things that you've never heard of before. The Holy Roman Empire, Papal States, Aragon. I thought this was Spain. Well, not until it becomes a nation many years later. So a map from 1300 looks very different from what you see today. Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, Germany, Greece, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Slovakia. This map is even old, but that's alright. This is a more modern map, and the point is that Europe is changing over time, and we'll work with this map later to help that sink into our heads. But for now, I want you to again pause, and you're going to take a few notes. So the notes I want you to take are these notes right here. So you pause, take those notes, and I said side note because this doesn't directly relate to the lesson objective, although it kind of does, but I want you to know it. So I'll let you know when it's a side note. And take those notes real quick, and then we'll continue. Okay, we're back. I think. Yes, we are. We're back, and we're going to talk about the rest of the lecture, what answers that lesson objective question. So I've given you the background about Europe, talked about the geography, and now I'm going to move right into the lecture. Why did that map change? Just real quickly, war, revolution, power struggles, immigration. There's a number of reasons that we'll get into throughout this course why that map of Europe changes so much. But you don't need to write that down. What we're going to do right now is we're going to move into the lecture, and I'm going to move at a pace quicker than you can write things, so pause when you need to write down notes, and I'm going to continue through here. So I'm going to talk about politics, society, and religion in that order. So the politics of Europe during the High Middle Ages. Europe has a few centralized states, what we would consider nations, what we see in Europe today. France and England are two of the first centralized nations, meaning they have a government system, they see themselves as one nation. And then Spain shortly after in the 1480s, and not yet in Italy and Germany. Italy's divided up into what's called the Papal States. Papal meaning Pope. And Italy is the home of the Vatican and Catholicism, essentially, and that's why they're called the Papal States. But there are a bunch of different independent city-states, And then you got the Holy Roman Empire, which we know as Germany today, which is hundreds of different states ruled by different princes. So I want you to keep those things in mind, and we'll work with a map with those later. So that's it for politics for now. Society. Society is organized around this social system known as feudalism. And we studied it last year. It's a system of protection and obligation. Essentially, peasants work for knights, who then provide them with protection and land. And why is this the case? Well, you got in the 5th through the 10th century, so from about 400 CE to 900 CE, you've got these invading, warring, conquering groups like the barbarians, who look like this, the Mongols. And you've got the Vikings, who don't look like that. That's the Minnesota Vikings, named after the Vikings, who they made that show about. So these Vikings, who may or may not be accurate, they're invading Europe and areas like the Holy Roman Empire and France are being invaded by these groups, and people need protection. So they organize themselves like this. A king has lords below him, and the lords work for the king, essentially, pay taxes to the king, and knights as well, and they own large portions of land called manors. That's a farm. We're going to talk about that in a second. And peasants work that farmland, and the reason they will submit to these knights or lords is because they offer them protection when they'd otherwise be killed by Vikings, Mongols, groups invading from the outside. So that's why feudalism evolves. This is how it looks. And then societies organized around a manor. A manor is a village farm owned by a local lord. We talked about the peasants. They're the poorest, the farmers, and they provide services, give a portion of their crops to the lord. Eventually they could buy freedom in certain situations, very rarely. But what they get in exchange is a small plot of land. It's theirs, housing, protection, and they are guaranteed their life in most situations. Below peasants are serfs. Serfs are especially common in Eastern Europe, Russia, and they're considered even more poor than the peasants, and they don't have property, and they still work under the lord, and they can't buy their freedom. So serfs would be in a class almost like slavery, even lower than the peasants. Here's what a manor might look like. You've got the house, the main house, and then you've got different areas where peasants lived, the village. You have a church and a town, because remember, the church is also a central part of Middle-Age society. And then you've got the crops. A river is essential at this time because you need to water your crops. So that's what a traditional European village or manor would look like. Let's talk about religion. By the 1300s, the church has become very powerful. So when we talk about church, we're talking about Big C, the Catholic Church. Okay, we're talking about monasteries that would look like this, that are very powerful because they control education, information. You got to remember, most of society is illiterate. People don't read, so how do they get their information? They go to church, and the priest gives them the information, and that's where they get most of their information, and that's power, because information is power. So monasteries serve as centers of society. They provide schools, inns, hospitals, libraries, and the church also controls a huge portion of the land in Western Europe. A third of all land is owned by the church. These things mean power. Education, information, land, all these things equal money. So the church has become very powerful by the 1300s, and they're going to clash, and we're going to see it in the next couple units and this unit with the state, the government, as they compete for power. So religion continued. You know what? I'm going to skip this, and I'm going to go over it at the beginning of class, so we will come back to this. This. Yeah, we'll come back to all of this. Alright, so I just want you to get to there. So at this point, we will stop. You will bring these notes to class, and we will pick up with this lecture at the beginning of class on Wednesday. See you then. Thank you very much. Ciao.